Tonight on Cosmic Cantina, we've talked about people going missing in mysterious circumstances before, but what happens when entire villages and communities and even civilizations suddenly drop off the face of the Earth? Could they have been whisked away to another planet by our space brothers? Or maybe they were driven away by some evil, otherworldly force. Either way, we're diving in and pulling out some crazy stories of mass disappearance. Enjoy. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and every week I go to my favorite bar, Cosmic Cantina, and kick back with my co-hosts, Josh Golombeski and Matt O'Connor. We talk about aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, ancient cultures, and anything from the unseen world that needs a little illumination. Welcome to Cosmic Cantina. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and tonight we are actually shooting this in video, so not only are you going to hear us, but you're going to get to see us. And I am wearing some Russian hat from World War II, and I'm drinking vodka and kombucha because it's classy. Lady Boss, very thirsty. And we're all wearing hats, actually. So Matt, what do you got in your head, and what are you drinking?
All right, so I got my Aussie beach hat on, and it's it's making me sweat because it is like 100 degrees right now and like 100% humidity. But anyway, I am drinking a little. This one's called Fat Pixie.
Nice.
It's an apple cider, and they
Just
also
like you like your women.
That's right. I like a fat pixie. But it's good. It's sweet. I just realized it was 8% alcohol. So if I'm slurring by the end of this, I'm blaming the fat fucking pixies. It's not my fault.
That's right.
Pixies
It's not
did
your
it.
fault.
Nope.
It's not your fault.
Pixies did it.
Josh, what trouble are you in?
I'm wearing a hat that has no name. All I know is a lot of people in Michigan wear them, and I fucking love it. It's negative like 5 degrees right now in Colorado, so you can
True.
take your 100 degrees. You just complained about warm weather. To me, it felt like you were insulting my soul.
Yeah.
Tonight, I'm drinking a Prosecco. It is gluten-free. It's a cider. It has a woodchuck on it. Feels a little manly, but it definitely is probably marketed towards women. It's fine, though. It's good. I like it. It's nice.
Listen,
Wait, why is a
No one's
woodchuck
judging.
marketing towards a woman?
Well, I don't know why I really said that, but now I got to backpedal a little bit. So
Women
it's
love
just
a
Yeah, you
furry
do.
animal.
and
Women love a furry animal.
it just looks like it's for women. It's like a White Claw. Here, have a White Claw. Have a Prosecco. It just sounds like I'm not saying it's bad. I like feminine energy. Jeez, have I dug a big enough ditch for myself?
I think
yet,
you're
or
in a
can
lot of trouble. I think you should stop where you're at.
Backpedaling furiously.
Jesus, we're 1 minute in.
Otherwise, you might disappear. Because that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about civilizations that have literally disappeared off the face of the planet. Just mysteriously disappeared. Nobody can figure out what happened to them. Thriving cultures that then once, poof, disappear. Nobody knows where they go. So, I found this article, like I do every time. And this really got me thinking about, I've covered a lot of this stuff on Ancient Aliens and some stuff for Gaia, but this idea that like aliens came down and might have like maybe even taken the Mayan culture, the Mayan civilization, because they just disappeared one day. But then I read this, and it got me really thinking about where these ancient civilizations might have gone. So it's called Pictured: Remains of a Cambodia Angkor Wat-like Temple Found on Mars. Now, we know that on Mars, there's a lot of people digging around. They found pyramids, some kind of, obviously we've all seen the face on Mars. There looks to be like there's obelisks of some sort. But this is a new finding, so I'm just going to read what the article says. There are more ancient relics on Mars than on Earth, according to the latest posts from alien hunters. After Egyptian and Mayan pyramids and a Stonehenge-like circle were found on Mars, comes the Bayon Temple, like those found on the world-famous Angkor Wat in Cambodia. Scott Waring, editor of UFO Sightings Daily, said he found the temple posting next to a picture of the historic Angkor Wat relic. So he was looking, he was analyzing the surface of Mars. He saw 2 pyramid shapes, and then the smaller one has one side open, and you see a figure sitting in it with a flat back sticking up behind its head. And, of course, we're going to post these pictures so you can analyze them for yourself. You can see the faces that are on these Angkor Wat temples. That's what he's referring to. And then, of course, what he's analyzing on the surface of Mars, you can find them on our group page on Facebook, and then also on our actual page, thecosmiccantina.com. So he says a lot of Buddha statues here in Taiwan have that larger one. So he says a lot of these Buddhist-like statues have this same kind of setup with the larger one has like a tall grandfather beard face, and then the third face. Actually, I don't know what this means. But this is what he says in the article.
Trippy.
But if again, we're going to post the faces of Angkor Wat, and you can see the faces and see how they look kind of the same. And this is something new because again, we've heard about pyramids, we've heard about obelisks, Stonehenge, possible Stonehenge on the surface of Mars. But we've never come across kind of this Buddha type face that you find on the temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia. So then I just obviously I've covered a lot of these civilizations, especially the Mayan culture, the Mayan civilization is always a really big one. That always seems to go into this idea that not only it wasn't just famine or it was a drought of some sort. Like there literally was just one day where the whole civilization got picked up and removed. So I did a little research, and I found that these mysterious civilizations kind of had the same fate. So there's the Mayan, there's the Indus Valley civilization. One of the greatest civilizations of the ancient world is called simply the Indus or Harappan civilization. Thousands of years ago, it boasted 5 million people. About 10% of the world's population, spread over a region that encompassed parts of today's India, Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan. Had grand walkways, sophisticated roadside drainage, shops, massive houses, and was abandoned just like that. Easter Island, I'm sure you heard a lot about Easter Island. People of Eastern Island represented another classic lost civilization, famed in part for its enigmatic. Enigmatic. Thank you.
I take much joy from this.
I'm sure you do. I think it's the hat. It's like squeezing all of my intelligence out. Or maybe it's the vodka. I cannot tell. Enormous stone statues of human heads called moa lined up against the island's coastline. But then, of course, nobody knows. This civilization just disappeared. At one point, they were there, and then they were gone, and then nobody kind of... I mean, there's all these ideas of who that civilization was, but it's still a little mucky. And then there's the Cahokia Indian tribe. Those are the builders of mounds across the across the Midwest. I don't know if you've known anything about the mounds. Mm-hmm. This area boasted giants, exactly. This is where you find stories of giants and lots of weird stuff. 40,000 people were apparently in this great city. This is the biggest one far north of Mesoamerica. Brilliant artists, architects, farmers, sophisticated system, and then also just disappeared. And then there's Angkor Wat. Same thing. I don't know if anybody who's listening to this podcast has ever been to Angkor Wat. I spent a lot of time there. It's not just the main temple. There's so many temples hidden in the jungle. You can't even possibly get to all of them. Like, even if you tried, there's such a sophistication of this massive city that they've just completely left to ruin. Sophisticated roads, canals. There's also evidence of several religions there at the same time. Archaeologists believe it may have been the biggest urban site in the world at its height, and then suddenly, completely, everybody ran away, completely disappeared. So, whether they were taken up in a ship to Mars, and everybody just lived in Mars.
That's probably what happened.
I'm going with Mars.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or something happened that they needed to exit the city right away, and I guess, you know, I get the point where they're saying there could have been a famine or a drought, and, you know, things were dwindling in the city, but that seems like, you know, if you call something your home, you're not going to just get up and pack in the middle of the night and leave. You would kind of hold out for a while, right? It's not like a mass exodus right away, right? I mean,
I left my home in America, came back here.
Yeah, but that took you like 2 months to leave your house in America. That's what I'm talking
It
about.
did.
You didn't
It was
just
a big
pack one
undertaking.
bag and leave.
Yeah.
Like
I think I need
like
a couple
that
more
moment.
facts before I go. They went to Mars, or you got to know it could have been a famine or a disease or some sort of attack from another culture, and it looks sudden. But back up to Mars quick. I went to a MUFON presentation. Yep, I went to a MUFON presentation in the 2000s about Mars, and it blew me away. It was more than just pyramids and faces. This is really new information to me. I didn't know there was also an image or a mountain or a structure that looks like the Buddha from Cambodia. But there's also, if you look at Mars from space, it looks like something exploded and like scarred half of it. It looks like something exploded and just scarred it. And this presentation went into not just the pyramids, but if you look at Mars and you get close to it, there's all these like tubular systems like run under the ground, running between places all over the place. Mars is a fascinating subject that I could go deep on just alone on that. But I never knew this connection. That's really interesting.
Well, I bring this so many times up in our podcast, but the electric universe theory talks about what happened when there was this collision between all the planets. And one of the big ones was Mars and Venus came way too close to each other. And so Venus like scarred Mars. Like
interesting.
in their theory, everything in the universe is run on an electric current. So it wasn't like Venus hit Mars. It's that they came too close together and it created an electric current and it carved up the surface of Mars. It's the same. They have the same theory on the Grand Canyon, that Venus came too close to Mars and did the same thing. It created an electrical current between the two planets, and then that electrical current was so strong it actually carved the surface of our planet as well.
Jesus, I don't want to be around if something like that goes down again.
No.
That sounds intense.
Yeah.
I think that's where the idea that like women are fiery and this whole idea that the goddess is pissed, the whole fight in the sky with Mars being the
that's
warrior
interesting.
and Venus like the goddess of love, but then she turns into Medusa and like burns everybody to a pulp. I don't know. Could be where that comes from.
No, I like that. That's super cool. Hey, one quick thought before you go on. One thing I'm noticing is a lot of mass disappearances are near a body of water. And what I'm wondering now, and in my story I'm going to tell in a little bit, it was near granite, which is a connection to what do we know about? Missing 411 and people missing around the country. So is there a connection between mass disappearances, single disappearances, all disappearances, and granite and water? I don't know. But that's where my mind's going.
But that's really interesting because all these places we talked about, huge, massive, whether they're statues or they're buildings or they're structures, massive structures of granite.
So okay. I didn't know they were granite.
Think of these big structures, like the Mayan civilization. I mean, there's a reason why we know there's a Mayan civilization. Like, there's amazing ruins.
Huh.
Think of the
really-
ruins in the Middle East and the faces on Easter Island. Those are massive.
Wow, my half-baked idea might actually have some legs. That's really interesting. There's a connection there. I was just listening to
Cambodia.
Politis. Yeah, is that all granite? See, I didn't know the structures are made of granite. I knew they were by water, and I hadn't done the research yet to know if it. That's really, really actually compelling. I've been watching a lot of Politis stuff randomly on his channel on YouTube lately, and he keeps talking about granite and water all the time. I was doing a little research for the podcast. Then he got all grumpy about people not giving him enough money on his YouTube channel. But I still like him. I still like the video. It didn't bother me that much.
Don't get grumpy, man. Just wear a hat. Have a drink. Just hang out.
Just relax,
okay,
bro.
one more thought before we go on to your stuff. Okay, so these two things, like there's missing civilizations. There's all these structures on Mars. So a couple things could have happened. I mean, of course, we have no evidence of this. It's just fun to talk about, right? There could have been all these civilizations and all these structures and all these kind of belief systems that we have today on Earth, on Mars. A destruction happened. They brought all that stuff to Earth. What if they went back at some point? What if those civilizations that disappeared went back to not Mars, but wherever they came from?
Okay.
I don't know. Just
Yeah,
a
some
thought.
sort
I
of
have no
portal.
evidence.
No, I like
evidence.
I like the idea because I don't know, back to Missing 411, it seems like a portal thing is going on. And what if a lot of these ancient sites talk about these portal systems, the energy pyramids, portals they're all connected to the stars, to the Palladian. I mean, totally, that could totally be what it is. Giant, or maybe it's not a portal, just a big ship, but I could see them opening a portal, everyone walks through, boom, the portal shuts off, and then everyone's like, they disappeared. What happened here? I think that's a cool speculation. Yeah, I'm
Wait,
not
they're
just
from New
bullshitting.
York?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. No, I think a lot of those civilizations have they all seem to have stories of being visited by something or someone from the sky. But is there any stories of them taking off? I guess there's like the stories of like Moses traveling up the mountain to speak to God and all that sort of stuff. I wonder if that's kind of a metaphor for, I don't know, wild speculation here.
Yeah, this is like our
this-
hugest wild speculation show
Yeah.
ever. And usually I don't speculate on anything, but I'm just saying that
I do.
we keep finding things on Mars that simulate different cultures around the world, different shapes. And my thought process is either they were there before and they came to Earth, started the civilization, and then decided to leave at some point. Maybe. Could be. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
Mars
no,
is
I
pretty
guess-
desolate
Hot
these
take.
days.
Hot take. Yeah.
Hot take. Okay.
Well, if you wait before you go on, if you agree that some of these ancient structures are actually a lot older than we think they are, which is there's some compelling evidence coming out through a bunch of different interesting people doing a lot of hardcore work into this research, and if you believe that, then there was an advanced civilization a long time ago that may have had different abilities than we're aware of today. And I think there's a lot of stuff coming out to light about where Atlantis is, what Atlantis meant. It could have been a worldwide civilization. They could have been technologically advanced in ways that we're not today. And there is a lot of stuff about portals, a lot of weird stuff that seems sci-fi, but when you get into it, you're like, what? That's really what they believed and what they wrote down? So, yeah, I don't know. Some of those mass disappearances aren't as easy as, like, they just walked into the jungle and that was it. Like, there's something else going on there, and I think it's disservice just to dismiss it because it sounds crazy.
Right. Because, okay, here's another thing, too. Wouldn't those people that left, they're like, okay, we can't be in that city anymore. Wouldn't they go and tell everybody and write about it or carve about it that they had to leave this city? And then they're here in this city, and they made this city work because they had to leave that city. But there's not any of that. Like, everybody that I mentioned, every place that I mentioned, there's not any of those people leaving and telling their offspring why they left. I mean, there's... in all of these places, there's some kind of written language. They would have taken that somewhere else and
Unless they had to
carved
flee
it.
in a hurry, like a story that I'm about to go into later on. But
Yeah, but if they survived, wouldn't they have carved it somewhere
true,
else?
yeah. Would have told someone we got the fuck out of there for whatever reason. Yeah.
Right, don't go back. We got the fuck out of there. But
Yeah.
but there's none of that. So that's what I'm saying. It's just mysterious. All right.
Yeah, I agree.
This is Melissa's most widely speculated idea ever
Yeah.
on this podcast,
Which is really saying something. 'Cause
which is really saying something. Okay, Josh, let's talk about your granite and your water puddles or whatever it is you have.
First of all, this is a safe space to speculate. We're in a fictional bar, boozing and talking shit
speculate.
and slinging alien stories. Like, this is the time to speculate.
yeah.
I got a speculative story for you. A mass
Okay.
disappearance. A famous one. Well, I didn't know it was famous. I guess it's famous in Canada to our brothers and sisters up north. And it's really, really cool because it has a lot of aspects of stories that we like on this podcast. It's got little alien stuff in it. So
we
let me
like
break it down.
stories. Yeah.
Okay, we call this the Angie Cooney Lake mass disappearance incident. That's not what they call it. I just did that. It's not very good. I know. I'll work on that. So okay,
It's a little
here's the-
long. You know, if you were marketing that, you'd have to, trim some words.
Sage advice. So this
Okay.
first appeared in a Canadian newspaper called Le Pas in Manitoba by a reporter named Emmett Kelleher in 1930. So this was really published in a newspaper. It was copyrighted in the newspaper, which is immediately suspicious. Like, why would you copyright a news story? But apparently at the time that was more normal, and the story was so crazy that the guy wanted rights to it. But that's what people say after the fact about this story of why it could be bullshit. But I don't know. There's not enough evidence either way. But it's really compelling. So where did this take place? This took place at the Angie Cooney Lake, which I'm pronouncing correctly, off the Kazan River, about 1,500 miles northwest of Ottawa. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's rural. There's 2 people per square mile. The Inuits, or the Eskimos, usually are there during the summer, and then they leave to go to the coast on the winter. This took place in November, which is a little weird, but sometimes they go in for hunting and fishing trips and leave. Okay. So on November 30th, this guy named Joe LaBelle, who's a roaming trapper in the area, who roams this area looking for animals, who happens to go to this village and knows where they are and sometimes would stop by to rest and sleep and get a warm fire. He pulled up on a canoe on a river to this area, and there's about roughly 30 people living in this village and 10 or 12 tents or something. And he pulled up and there was nothing. It was eerily silent. He gets off the canoe, he starts walking towards the tents, and it looks like people were just there. Like the tents were open. They looked. I mean, the fire isn't going, but it looks like they just left whatever was around the fire. He starts to notice dead dogs, and he sees a bunch of dead dogs inside these tents and outside. And then suddenly two whine and start and run up to him. These two dogs run up. So two survive, but they were very thin. So clearly they weren't getting fed. Like it's really bizarre. It looks like they just left, but also that they've been gone a while at the same time, which will make sense later. It's very bizarre. So Joe is getting creeped out. He just feels something's wrong. Instinctually, something's wrong. And in his head, what he recalls in the newspaper is that he kept thinking of this demon that the Inuits and the Eskimos talk about a lot. And I can't pronounce it. I'm going to try. It's going to be terrible, but it's spelled INUPASUGJUK. Inupasujuka. I don't know. That was obviously not close.
That's pretty good.
I thought I'd try for you.
I'm impressed.
Wow. I think the hat does wonders for you.
Yeah.
I think the hat takes my credibility down, but it's cool. So what these things are they're giants that abduct humans. There's no other description other than they're just big-ass people who abduct humans, and they go across the Arctic, and they take them. So this guy kept thinking of these creatures while he was walking through. He couldn't get it out of his head.
Have you seen there's I think it's an AMC show called The Terror about two English boats that travel across the Arctic, and they get stuck in the Arctic ice. And then they meet the Inuit people, and then there's this creature that's a big giant creature that's kills and takes people.
Oh, that's probably it.
Maybe
that's
that
probably
might be
it.
it.
Shit.
I don't know.
Is that based
Anyway.
off a book?
Tangent.
Is that based off a book? I think that's based off a book. I read a book just like that too.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, no, that's
it's
great to know.
It's a true story, but they added in some supernatural stuff. But yeah, awesome show. Anyway, what do you got?
So in this story, we already got like mythological creatures. But just small tangent. There's also a demon in the Inuit called a Mahaha. The reason why I want to bring up the Mahaha because it's hysterical. Mahaha is a maniacal demon that terrorized parts of the Arctic. This creature is described as a thin, sinewy being, ice blue in color and cold to the touch. Mahaha eyes are white and they peer through the long, stringy hair that hangs in its face. This demon is always smiling and giggling, and it kills all its victims by tickling them to death.
What?
What? This is like somebody's uncle.
That'd be a fun way to go, though.
Creepy uncle. The Mahaha, they're ridiculous. Anyways, back to the story where it's serious and somber.
All right.
So these dogs are whining, they're hungry, this guy feels terrible. He comes across the edge of the campment, no one's there, and he finds... this is like the scene from the movie Aliens where they come into the facility and and everyone looks like they just left.
Yeah.
But this is what's creepy. He comes to the gravestones outside the camp, and all of them have been exhumed. All the bodies have been taken, and all the headstones have been neatly piled up next to a grave on either side of the graves, I guess.
Whoa.
Super bizarre. This guy's starting to freak out. Joe is like, I'm out of here. So he feeds the dogs, and he goes to report this to the police, or the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP.
And just to pull you up there real quick, I remember, because little background of the story, Josh. I started going into this story, and then Josh said, hey, this is my story. And I'm like, fuck, that was my story. Anyway, but I remember them specifically saying that in the Inuit culture, desecrating a grave or digging up someone's grave is like a huge no-no. Like, that's bad juju. Terrible
But
stuff.
don't you think it's bad juju in any culture? I mean,
yeah.
if I saw somebody digging up a grave here, I'd be like, what the fuck is that?
But we're able to exhume graves and stuff for investigations and stuff. Like it's like
True.
It's
That's
like
true.
mortal sin. Anyway, just an
Okay.
interesting note. So they
think I
didn't
remember
do it
reading that too,
themselves,
yeah.
is what I'm saying.
So wait, Josh, were the bodies
Gone.
outside of the graves, or are they completely gone?
Gone. Sorry for not being clear. Just gone. Missing. These
Yeah.
people are just missing. So the police went to the village, and they went with a trapper named Armand Laurent and his two sons. Apparently, days leading up to this, they saw one mysterious gleaming object in the sky heading towards the lake, and it was capable of changing shape, which is interesting. While the police were there investigating, they saw strange lights themselves. Now, they're used to seeing strange lights up there in the Aurora Borealis and just the northern lights, and this was clearly different. And they saw the same thing that the guy and his son saw. On the outskirts of the village, they found more dead dogs. It looked like it's such a weird scenario. So some dogs were in the village. They must have came back and died, but a lot of them were left outside the village, all dead, just away from the village, like they didn't want to come back for some reason. But then eventually it looks like maybe some got so hungry they ran back eventually when they weren't scared anymore. So that was very, very bizarre. At the end of it, they concluded this, which is super weird. The village had been abandoned for 2 months based on some berries they found. I'm not sure what the science on that was, but they figured it out. But someone had been using it. So it's a little confusing there. Did they get taken and someone happened to come by and just use their stuff for a while? That's probably what happened, but it's super bizarre. So
That's
later,
weird.
this whole story is recounted in a book in 1959, and a lot of people say that's the origin of it, but it's not. It definitely was in newspapers way earlier in time, in 1930 for sure. So I just want to clear that up. People think the story is completely made up from this book, and it's not. The book references it. There's still a lot of controversy whether the story is actually real. I would say no one can. You really can't know. But this is some other things that were really weird that led me up to the missing 4-in-1 granite connection that happened. There was a rumor of a boy who wandered into another camp, who may have came from this village and didn't really remember where he came from and couldn't really talk. That's a very missing 4-in-1 thing. Like something happens and like, I don't know where I was, and they can't really talk about it. Really weird. This happened next to a lake. There was a UFO sighting, there are lots of missing 4-in-1 stories with mysterious lights in the sky. And I looked up this lake quickly to see if it had granite in it, and it did. It has alternating granite GNEISS subdomains, whatever the fuck that means, but it's granite. So this lake has granite, it's water, so it has all the signs of a mass missing 4-in-1 abduction. And I found that parallel compelling. Even if the story is made up, it just seems like there's a common theme between a lot of people mysteriously disappearing. And David Paulides is onto something, even if he's a little grumpy.
Interesting.
So wait a second. The lake was close to the encampment that you were talking about in the beginning?
Yeah, sorry if I wasn't clear. The tents and the camping was right along a lake. The guy pulled up in a canoe, and it was right along a lake, or a river, lake, both.
And then some kid wandered into another camp?
Later, there was a rumor of a boy who wandered into another camp that supposedly came from that village, but he couldn't talk, and he couldn't explain where he came from.
Yeah,
that's just a rumor.
4-1-1, yeah.
So
Can you
all those
imagine
little
if
things.
that happened in ancient times? Like a whole 40,000 people in one village just showed up somewhere else and they couldn't talk about where they came from?
Yeah, that's some spooky shit. My biggest fear is suddenly disappearing. I've always had a fascination with those sudden stories where people disappear. That's just the scariest shit to go into another portal or dimension. So this stuff is
Right.
not fun, and it doesn't seem like it's ending well. Though in some of the cases of the large mass disappearances, like the Mayans, that seems like something holy or spiritual happened. Like it doesn't seem, or cataclysmic. It doesn't seem like just like a UFO abducted them quick. So I think we're dealing with different things here, clearly. But like we always talk about, maybe they're all connected. But that's what I
Yeah.
get.
I mean, maybe there's some
Nice.
patterns. Because that's freaky. I mean, because, here we are thinking that it's just aliens, well, I guess I was, because I'm suggesting with my article that they came from Mars or they went to Mars, whatever.
Yeah.
But it could be something totally supernatural. It could be something demonic that could have happened.
Well, think about this. Why do all the ancient cultures always have these mythological creatures that we so easily dismiss? Like, what is it? It's all a metaphor for something. So, like, it wasn't giants. Maybe it was giant aliens, or it was like their metaphor for something darker. I love mythology. I don't know about you guys, but I buy every mythology book I can find. I go to my mom's librarian. I'll go to stores and I'll buy books that they're supposed to be for my kids. All my coffee table books are all like mythological creatures from around the world. And then my wife lets it last for 2 weeks, and she takes that shit out of there. So it doesn't matter now. It's fucking COVID. Just leave it there.
She's like, that's nice, Josh. Let's move it over here where no one can see it.
Let's put it in this closet, right at the back. Yeah.
Anyways, I just love when mythology-
They talk about creatures from beneath the earth or something like that. There's that classic
Right.
demons from below the earth, like from hell or whatever.
Yeah.
I think the giants are from cave systems below. Like something's going on below, interdimensional. Like something's here,
Yeah.
and they've been picking it up on it for a millennia. Now, I don't know. I think it's fascinating. I think we should trust these stories from the past more. It's so interesting how we dismiss large parts of mythology, but accept when they draw an antelope. But if they draw a UFO, we're like, meh.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I like that you basically brought up a modern story, and maybe there's some patterns that can link to some of these ancient civilizations that have completely disappeared. Maybe there is a pattern. I mean, maybe it's still happening today. Like you said, that people are calling it a demon, but something's happening where people just disappear. Whether it's alien, supernatural, they fall into another portal of existence, some other dimension. It's possible.
Yeah.
And there's just it's an interesting pattern. Granite, water, still happening today.
It's like electricity is in there for some reason because they're like conductors of electricity, you know.
And something comes through or they go through. It's just, I don't know. It's very strange. Just trying to draw patterns.
Just trying to wildly speculate on this shit.
Yeah,
No big
it's
deal.
just my it's mostly speculation show.
Yeah. We need
All
to
right,
You need
Matt,
to
what-
speculate.
What dark corner of crap have you dug up?
Oh man, such a dark corner of crap. Let me tell you. All right, so before I go into my stuff, I have a quick update on a little story we did a little while ago. I don't know when it was, but when we did the Dyatlov Pass incident.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
I love that one. It's my
Yeah.
favorite. Sorry.
So recently, I guess 8 tourists who went hiking in the Dyatlov Pass area after learning about the incident and decided they wanted to go up and check out the area and kind of like do like a little hike in honor of those people who died up there, went missing in that
When?
same area.
When?
In this last week. The news story popped up.
Oh shit.
But don't get too excited, they found him again.
Oh.
They were missing for a few days. So they tracked them down, and it was just because I guess there was a huge snowstorm and they got stuck in some area, but then they were able to get out again. So anyway,
Did they see
I thought it was gonna
Bigfoot?
be
Did they
huge, and then
see-
it was like, oh man, they found him.
Oh, but freaky.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being those people though, and they get stuck, even if it's a snowstorm? But still,
Because they went up
First of all-
specifically for the people who got lost to begin with. So
ugh.
Oh, they
can't
did.
imagine.
Oh, okay. Jesus. Then they're dealing with the extra threat of like, oh my god, what if something crazy happens to us?
I know.
That's the
Yeah.
worst case
Yeah.
scenario.
Like the snowstorm happens, so they get trapped, so that this thing comes and like rips them apart, just like in the
I know.
Dyatlov's Pass. Ugh. Can't sign me
Like-
up for that trip. I'm not going.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be
Like
on a
it's-
beach.
It's
I'm good.
disappointing that they didn't get torn apart and mutilated by a Siberian Yeti.
Yeah.
A shame for us, talking about it. Good for them, I guess, but
Yeah, it worked out for
it
them.
was just a
Terrible.
bummer. Just a bummer to read the update that they were like, "Oh, we found him. Never mind." I was like, "Oh man, come on."
Man,
I mean, great.
That's terrible.
That's awesome. I appreciate it, but at the same time,
mean,
I'm like,
yeah.
"Fuck! I thought it was going to be a big deal." Anyway, so
You're such
moving
a
on.
dick.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. Anyway, so like I was saying, I was wanting to get into this story of why not just like a civilization or a large group of people just disappearing, but why that might have happened. So this is an example of this village in is called Colares, and it's on an island just off the coast of Brazil. And they were just went under attack, just randomly went under attack from these little UFOs who were buzzing around, shooting at them, which is crazy. They weren't, this is like a
What?
simple little fishing village on this island, and they're pretty remote, sort of cut off from modern civilization back in the 70s, late 70s. So here we go. So in the late 70s, there's in the Brazilian rainforest around the town of Colares. And like I said, it's on a little island just off the coast of Brazil. They experienced an onslaught of these UFO attacks. Like hundreds of people were injured by these mysterious wounds, and thousands of people in the area began to panic and then like just leave. They just wanted to get the fuck out of there after this was going on for a pretty extended amount of time. Like I think they said it was like a couple of months.
Wow.
But as this was happening, it forced the Brazilian government to launch one of their largest military operations in Brazilian history to see what was going down with this thing. And I think it sounds like this was a pretty big story in Brazil, but I'd never heard of it. Not that that's
I've
saying
never heard of
anything,
it.
But the operation was called Operation Prato, and Prato is Portuguese for plate. And it was like like a dish, like describing the idea of a saucer, like a flying
Oh,
shape.
got it.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
I would have picked bowl, but plate. I get it. It's okay.
yeah.
Yeah. It's fine. Whatever.
It's fine. It works.
I mean, that was kind of a rough translation, I guess, too, But, so anyway, in the years before 1977, the Brazilian army monitored the air and sea incursions into its territory. UFOs were constantly monitored on radars coming out of the sea in formations that were seen above so they came out of the sea, these UFOs, so they didn't come from the sky, which is crazy. They were coming out of the ocean and from this
That's not crazy to me. That's not crazy to me.
We've done this before, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. All right.
Yep. So
Okay,
they came out of
all
the
right.
ocean And they also came out of this inaccessible part of the rainforest that there's no human habitation there because inaccessible. So they were like seen hovering over here and going in and out of this area in the,
Ooh,
in the
that's
rainforest.
interesting.
Probably
So-
like a deep cave system.
Yeah, that's what, like, beneath the earth, where they're going, like, down into, like, you know, some sort of crevice underneath the ocean or whatever. So the Brazilian army initially considered them to be, like, these military infiltrations. So they initially thought that it was an invading army from another, you know, country that was kind of coming in to fuck with them. But they later determined this was not the work of a foreign invading country at all, because what they were seeing were these flying, so there's varying, you know, shapes, different shapes and sizes of these UFOs, which is crazy too. It wasn't just like one type. So there's varying sizes of cylinders, spheres, discs of various shapes, vertical and horizontal flights of cylinders again, boomerangs, triangles, all sorts of
Wow,
crazy
everything.
things happening.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's all the UFOs.
And so they were flying over and shooting at the people on this island?
Yeah, it was madness. Like, it's just insane. And there was a cover up that tried to happen, but it was such a big deal that they couldn't cover it up because so many people witnessed it, and it was just insanity. So
Wait, hold on. Okay, before you go on, do you know exactly? You're going to share this in a second. Like, what exactly were they shooting? Like, what, people just losing limbs, or
Oh,
were they
yeah.
getting burned, or was it like a
No, we'll get into
sunburn?
that.
Were they dying?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to
Okay.
that.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
No, you're good. So objects of
Was
all
it
sizes.
angel hair? Was it angel hair?
Yeah,
Yeah, you know it was
they were just being jizzed on. Yeah, just a whole lot of jizz.
all
No big
over their
deal.
face. Yeah.
Radioactive jizz.
You guys, it's like 44 minutes in, and you just had a dick
I know.
joke. Okay,
We're slack on this one.
I'm glad I could
Yeah.
help. Could
Yeah,
help.
Where's the
Thank
big
you.
dick energy? Yeah.
Yeah, we missed out.
All right. Okay.
All right. So
All right,
objects of all
focus.
sizes and in shapes. And also people saw beings that operated these aircraft, which is
Ooh.
interesting too. And these aircraft, they said, fired something like a laser beam and hitting these like helpless people who were just running around this village, right? So yeah, like I said before, these people on the island, they weren't like some fierce military force. They were just simple fisher people, like fisherman village. It was like pretty rudimentary. They weren't like they were mostly living far away from sort of any sort of modern civilization or whatever, you know. Most of the places didn't have electricity. You know, it was really sort of just a little, you know, village away from the rest of civilization kind of thing. So the UFOs started buzzing the city in the late 70s. And actually, I think there was in part of the report that was released later on, the military and Air Force were referring to these things as bugs, which again was a translation of, you know, it could have been like a little different, but bugs seemed to be like an interesting way they were describing these things. Pests, but they were like organic. They were, you know, biological. It wasn't just machines. They felt that there was some sort of sentience behind them. So they buzz this village and shoot ray beams that could pass through solid materials like the roof of a car, the roof of houses, behind walls, and it would hit them with extreme precision as they were trying to hide and run away from these things. And they were able to also stop cars, stop helicopters in the middle of flight, and boats and ships on the sea. They said they would run out of energy after being hit by these beams. And they said the speed and the maneuverability in which these craft moved, it was physically impossible to escape these objects and their light beams. Pew pew. Pew. It probably didn't sound like that.
No, they definitely did.
So wait, what do you think? Do you think these alien beings, UFOs, were trying to just get people to leave the island so they could inhabit it?
That's what it sounds like to me. I didn't read anything that was a speculation of why this was happening, except we'll get into this later, but I guess the Brazilian military, after so much backlash of trying to find information of this, because they were trying to cover it up, and they found all these people who were like doctors who were you know, looking at the victims of what was happening. There were trying to diagnose what was going on. They saw all the wounds and everything. It was like so many people came out and said, yes, this crazy shit was going on, that they were able to petition the military, I guess, to release anything, to talk about something. And so I guess the military then, the Air Force and the military agreed to meet with a group of ufologists of all people and released a whole bunch of information, which was kind of weird. I don't know how the Brazilian military works with their relationship with the media or whatever, but they seem to be a little bit more open to talking about this stuff.
Yeah, we are, for sure. Mm-hmm.
So they said the inhabitants of this city called these things the chupa chupa, which means suck or suction, right? Like the chupacabra means the goat sucker, right?
Oh.
Sucker.
Because they thought what was happening was after they would get hit by these rays, they would be missing pieces of skin, and they believed it was draining their blood too.
Ooh.
Which is weird. So many of the victims after contact with the beam would faint and wake up in various states of consciousness, weakened and anemic. And they said a lot of the victims were treated by doctors who spoke openly about it. So this is where stuff started coming out, right? So this was a Dr. Carvalho, and she personally treated more than 120 patients affected by these laser beams. And she would say the wounds of these victims would always be around the torso, the neck and chest area. In the place of the burnt part of the skin, there would be two small parallel holes like bites, like a vampire bite almost, right? So she says the UFOs fired intense beams of radiation that caused puncture marks and lesions, with some reporting to local media at the time that it felt like a heavy weight being pushed down on their chest. A report into the claims made by the victims stated the beam was about 7 or 8 centimeters in diameter, so pretty thick beam, and white in color. It never hunted for them, but it just hit them suddenly. And when they tried to scream, no sound would come out, but their eyes remained open.
Oh my
It was kind of a
God.
weird thing that said would happen.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, forget it. This is one of those situations where I'd be like, we're packing up our shit and we're going to the mainland.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's
Tonight.
what eventually happened with the majority of this town. A few people stayed afterwards, but the most people just packed up and went, fuck this, we're out. They left. And just left the whole island. I don't know what it is like today, but...
So you don't know if anybody lives there, or I mean, I don't know who would move
I
back.
didn't have time
but-
to check in to see how it's going today. But I don't know. At the time, during the late 70s, everyone just fucked off. And the last thing they said was the beam felt hot, almost as hot as a cigarette burn. So when they were doing subsequent tests on the people, that they showed that these craft seemed to be shooting and leaving traces of radioactivity. So there was they would find, I think there was a photo in some of the documents that were released of these 3 holes in the ground that were like a landing. It was where it landed. And when they tested the holes, they found it was there was radiation coming from where it landed. So these things were just emanating radiation, which is crazy. So Dr. Cavallo went to her superiors with all this documentation she had of the patients she was seeing. And she was told nothing unusual was happening here. Don't worry about it. Forget about it.
Oh, we've
Forget
heard this
about it."
before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But apparently the scale of what was happening was so large, the authorities were unable to keep covering it up, which is why they subsequently launched Operation Plato. So the last thing on Dr. Cavallo, she said that the military officials compelled her to lie to the villagers about their injuries and to tell them that they were simply hallucinations. But she also admitted to having, while she was there treating the people, seen these craft a number of times as well, floating around. So it was it was a constant thing, and it was happening so often that apparently the military were able to predict when they would come through. They were able to set up and wait for these things to come through. So when they set up Operation Plato, you'd think it would
That
be
sounds very scientific. That sounds like they're coming at a certain time and place. They're shooting these people to get something. It feels very... If they can predict it, that means there's a schedule to it.
Yeah, there was something... It was almost like... This is why I say it felt like they were trying to drive these people out of the area, which was interesting. So when they launched Operation Plato, you'd think it was the military stepping in to try to protect the people. But no, apparently the goal of the mission of the Operation Plato was not to protect the population at all or engage in armed conflict with these aircraft, but to study and document the cases. Basically just sit back and see what happens. So many of the UFO experts believe that the order came directly from the United States, actually, and where the U.S. ordered the, I don't know what the Brazilian-U.S. relationship is, but it sounds like they have a bit of clout with them. Basically, they said, like, stand down, don't interfere, and they prohibited any armed conflict with these things. And whether that was because they just wanted to study what happened to the people, or whether it was like, look, you don't want to start firing on these things, otherwise they will fuck you up. I don't know what the deal was at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did anyone die?
Yes.
Yeah.
So a number of people died. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So
and
the doctor.
the fact that they
Sorry,
thought
what?
they could just keep it hidden.
Yeah. So the doctor herself said she treated a number of people who actually died not long after, and it sounds like we'll get into that. Actually, I think I wrote down some of that stuff somewhere. But she was talking about she was talking about people slowly dying of radiation poisoning. Their hair was falling out. They would go just super pale, and they would just slowly like die.
That's terrible.
Which is awful. Yeah.
Jesus, it's an episode of Chernobyl. You seen that shit?
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking of. Mm-hmm. Wow. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it would be so interesting to find out, like you said, you don't know what's happening at that island now, but it seemed, it does seem like they were driving them out for some reason.
There doesn't seem any reason for the attack other than trying to, clear the area for whatever reason. You know?
They weren't hunting anybody. They were just literally just shooting at anybody just to create mass hysteria.
Yeah.
Until everybody left.
Wow.
But even then, you guys, think about it. Even then, people still stayed until it was like, all right, let's get out of here. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like everybody just left because a couple people got shot by a UFO.
And let's not
No,
be so
it was-
quick to blame this on the aliens here, okay? Like, let's just take it back
Here
a
we
notch.
go.
There we go.
Our
Happy
space
go
bros.
lucky. Let's hold hands and get butt probed. Here we go.
There's still way more stories about good aliens and bad aliens, but you can go on with your bad alien story and your hidden agenda,
Yeah.
you Australian CIA narc.
There's no.
You know what?
There was
It also could be, just to go back to Patrick Jackson's theory with the spheres. I know that there wasn't just spheres. There was regular UFOs. There was the cigar-shaped ones, right? Like boomerangs,
that's
all
weird.
this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
But also the spheres are supposed to create this mass hysteria and fear in an
Yeah.
area and try to get people, and they're they have really high count of radiation, and they create this area which they don't want people to go.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So, I
Yeah,
mean,
that
they could have
sounds a lot like
also
what's
been
happening
involved
here.
in this system. Whatever's going on
Yeah.
there, it seems like it's some kind of entrance way into
Something.
maybe this massive matrix. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it looks like Jacques Vallée was a part of this, too. This is like a legit thing. I just looked it up, man. This is a legit thing in Brazil I've never heard
it's
about.
the real deal. Yeah.
I thought you were pulling this from some weird thing, and no, this actually happened.
This was pretty big apparently, and I'm surprised I'd never heard of it before.
I'm almost disappointed in myself.
Yeah. Come on, man. So
Come on, Josh.
So the head of
still overly
the
confident.
Operation Prato was a man by the name of Colonel Hollander. And he eventually
Huge
went
dick.
public in 1997, and he gave several interviews confirming the events of what happened in this story, and that he personally witnessed contact with the aircraft, but also physical contact with unknown beings.
Shit.
I couldn't find any more elaboration than that, but I did dig up an interview. It's all in Portuguese. Obviously, he's Brazilian. But I did find one that was translated, so we'll post that in the show notes afterwards.
Bananas.
Links.
Okay.
So here's the thing, though. 3 months after giving this interview, Captain Hollander was found dead in his home after he seemingly hung himself using the belt of his bathrobe.
Oof.
Interesting.
Oof.
He either committed
Yeah.
suicide or it was made to look like he did. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds
Wow.
very suspicious.
Yeah.
Because it's I feel in South America in general, more people and even governments are a little bit more open to extraterrestrial life to a point,
Yeah.
and then they kind of cap it. But that seems, I mean, this is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like although they released a huge amount, I think we'll get to that in a little bit, they released a whole bunch of documentation on this incident. There was still more that they obviously knew, but they didn't get into, they didn't release, which was, you know, they basically admitted this happened, but there was a whole bunch that they apparently found that didn't get out, so I don't know where that stuff is, but... So anyway, after Hollander, there was like a ton of other witnesses that came out. The doctor we talked about, soldiers, scientists, a bunch of the civilians, the villagers who came out as well and talked about this stuff. And they specifically said, they claimed that the spacecraft, they say spacecraft, but they came from the ocean apparently, are operated by non-human beings. And I'll go into a couple of the stories where they specifically talk about these things in a little bit. But anyway, so after this huge, they created this huge petition, and I guess there was something like a FOIA, like a Freedom of Information Act thing in the Brazil, where they requested or submitted to have all this information. Like I said before, the Brazilian military did then agree to meet with a group of, I think it was like 50 ufologists and media people, and basically released all this stuff. And I think that happened in 2005. And there was like, I think they released like a 2,000-page military report featuring 500 photographs, 16 hours of film that was all witnessed by these ufologists. Some of it was leaked out in that time and photocopied and stuff. They said in the reports that several military personnel who were studying this suffered nervous breakdowns, while others went completely insane during the course of this investigation, which is like, holy shit. Maybe that guy just did kill himself. I don't know. Whatever it was pretty traumatic. So here's a couple of stories from the files from people in the village. So one woman was in her house with the children when she saw a ray of reddish light penetrating the roof. And some of these are really roughly translated, so you'll have to bear with me here maybe. It hit her, it spreads through her body and gave her the chills, and she started getting this feeling of being partially paralyzed, and then she started shaking. With great difficulty, she eventually was able to scream for help from her sister who lives nearby. Her sister soon arrived and she saw and heard nothing, but found her sister on the floor, like shaking. And then this woman she suffered afterwards pain between her shoulder blades, but no other symptoms. So this is the kind of thing that was happening. These things were it wasn't just they were walking along the road and something happened. It was invading their households. Like it was hunting people down.
That's so creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this other guy, he was at home listening to the radio when he saw a bluish light come through the roof tiles. He felt semi-paralyzed, feeling as if his head was expanding. He screamed loudly, or tried to, but he couldn't get anything out. It was as if his throat was blocked. And after the incident passed, he had a headache and hoarseness for several days. So some people were affected really badly. Some people got a cold afterwards. There was a farm worker who was on a side road working on his farm, and a light began hovering above him, 20 meters above him, above the trees that he was working near. And he said it was blue with 3 vertical black stripes in the center. And you get these, like, as you go through these stories, you get these like completely different witness statements about what these things look like, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. It was round and lighting everything up around it. The witness pointed his gun at it. No, that was a bad idea. And then was hit immediately by a ray of red light, which felt like it was electrocuting and paralyzing his whole body.
Yeah, You don't do that. Yeah, we've learned that in all of our podcasts. Anyone who tries to shoot at one of these things, it's not going to work.
Yeah, especially if you're Russian.
Right. Yeah, don't do that. Yeah.
Hey, Lady Buzz.
Yeah. Okay, so another guy was in front of his house with some friends. So here's the couple that were super interesting that I found with his friends. And he saw a yellow light moving towards him, slow in speed and stopping about 20 meters from the group of them. He said he could see 2 crew members inside who appeared to be human, one man and one woman. The man was on the left, the woman on the right. Both wore glasses, some sort of headgear over their eyes, and communication gear, earphones over their head. So is this military? I don't know. The craft directed a ray of red light towards the group. And then he said, having been hit directly, it felt like an electric shock from the feet to the head, then felt paralyzed, arms and legs immobilized, and he was semi-conscious. So I guess it just dropped him. The object gradually began to move away, gaining altitude and speed. The man was able to move again, feeling numb for some minutes. So it was just like shooting him and then fucking off. It wasn't like even doing anything. Not that they thought. Maybe there was like missing time. I don't know, but it was just
sounds
shooting
like
him and then.
Well, think about this. If the U.S. government said, don't engage these things, don't do anything about it, and they're seeing humans with headgear on, is it a military test? They're just picking on these poor
If
fishermen
you're
because
an
they can get
alien,
away
why
with
do you
it?
need headgear?
Yeah,
don't
it doesn't
know.
make sense.
And
Yeah, it
he
doesn't make
specifically
sense.
says.
I wonder if they're testing on people.
But here's-
Maybe?
Sorry. Yeah, maybe there was something in the area that maybe the U.S. military or someone else wanted to get at, so they just drove these people out. I don't know. But here's another description that I thought was pretty interesting of humanoids that came out of these things. So this guy saw light moving below tree level through the forested area, lighting up the area like daylight. This was during the night. Because of its brightness, the witness could see the structural details. It was circular with a reddish dome on top, giving the impression that it was transparent. At the distance of 70 meters, it appeared to be about 3 meters in diameter, 2 meters high. I don't know what that is in feet, because I'm doing metric now, so fuck y'all. Sorry, I got out of hand then. At the bottom of the porthole opened, and a humanoid-shaped being got out. Short but muscular. All right?
I don't know why I
Wearing
read
it.
that.
All right.
But I respect it.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Wearing a
Hat.
tight, dark, seamless uniform. The light was behind him.
Wow.
It was floating.
Short, jacked alien.
Yeah. It's just a
Tight
little
around the
jacked man.
package. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Huge,
Had a
huge
solid
unit.
package on him. Yeah.
Right. It was
Yeah.
awesome.
He was just throbbing from head to toe, this guy.
It's just undulating.
Which one of you human women want to come into the spaceship?
Come with me, ladies. So a reddish beam of light came out of his hand and went straight towards one of the witnesses, who just began like sprinting away. As the witness was running, he saw the being examine his fishing net that he was like fishing with, apparently, during the time. Then the humanoid returned to the object, which then moved towards the witness at low altitude with a searchlight seeking the witness. The witness ran across the mud flats and later arrived at a place where his friends were waiting in a boat. As he was telling them about the incident, the object appeared again with a different color, reddish on top and blue-green below. That's what these people are reporting too, is like was able to change colors as it was flying around.
Okay, but was it a sphere?
This one, I think, was just a lot of them that they report were like just a sphere of light.
Yes, see? That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Patrick Jackson's work of these spheres, it just creates this mass hysteria within people and creates these scars on their body. He has a lot of research, especially in his book, where you see people that have come in contact with these spheres and they have literally like marks through their body. Like they've been scarred.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was like shooting him like it was here? Or doing something to him?
Yeah, some people report that, but it's like it gets close to them and it like burns like marks in their skin.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So anyway, he runs to his friends. As he was telling about the incident, the object appears again, different color now. They all fled. They all just sprint out of the place. The humanoid came out again. inspected the boat that they were all sitting on, then returned again back to the object, which disappeared beyond the trees in like a blink of an eye. The witness was examined by doctors and psychologists, but no abnormalities were found. So there's a whole bunch of these. I'll link to this as well. There's like a document that's full of these incident reports of the village and the town. And there's a whole bunch of different things. A lot of them saying very similar things. You know, just walking around the town or being inside their homes and just being shot by lasers and it just fucking up their bodies for a little bit, either making them really sick, sometimes dying, or just being like sick for a couple of days.
Sounds like COVID.
Yeah, I was going to say. Sounds like COVID.
Yeah, we're shooting COVID
Just
directly.
depends on your genetic makeup.
Yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day, the majority of the village fled and just left the area. It'd be interesting to see what's happening on that island now, if there's people return back to the area or not. But yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that
I
would
thought
be an
that was
interesting follow-up. We should do a follow-up on another podcast because that's a really interesting story. But, you know, if we bring it back to the idea of missing civilizations, missing people, demons, supernatural, aliens, it does, this story, you have to think if you were in an ancient civilization and something was hunting you like that, you know, you would leave. But you still think that people would talk about it.
Yeah.
They'd create, I mean, maybe you're right, maybe they created creatures, maybe they created ideas of this so people would not forget it. And then they never went back because nobody went back. Right? So it would be interesting to do a little bit more research. Maybe we could do a follow-up on this and try to correlate the stories. Maybe I could do a little bit more digging into some of these missing civilizations if there's this idea of spheres or, you know, if anybody documented anything in ancient times after they fled. Or maybe they just went to Mars. I don't know.
Yeah. That's probably
I think multiple things are going on. Just like the answer to a lot of these issues are multiple high strangeness possibilities.
Yep.
Right.
It's probably not one thing, yeah.
It's probably, you're right, it's probably not one thing.
It's never black and white.
Right.
Yeah.
But, so, I mean, Josh, this is not your kind of episode. Because it sounds like something might be hunting us.
What, lightly? Shooting beams at people. Mostly everyone's fine.
Yeah. I didn't
There's
hear
no
any
love and light in
stories
this
of
episode.
No, there was no intergalactic reach arounds or anything. It was all very nasty.
I'm going to cleanse our fucking palates in a couple weeks with some really love and light healing stories or maybe a CE5 or something wonderful. I'm going to, you know, we're getting back
great,
out
Josh.
of the dark. I won't let you carry on with your agenda, all right? God damn.
Okay. Way to keep us in line there. All right, everybody. Have a good night. Stay safe. Don't get hit by laser beams in your home. And if you do, please report it so we know what's happening. And we will see you next week. Have a good night.
Goodbye.